is Monica Perez back again with world-class, world-renowned researcher and journalist Johnny Vedmore. Hi, Johnny. How are you?
I'm very good indeed. I'm just like everything is kicking off, everything in every possible thing, and I'm just trying to indulge and embrace everything and trying to do as much as possible. So I'm having a good time. I'm having a good time.
I've been just totally immersed in your work over the past couple of days, and I wonder where you get the time, energy, motivation, and courage to do the things that you are doing. I am just blown away.
Ooh, courage. Oh my God. Well, I mean, the thing about I got to a point for people who know about my little journey through Earth. I mean, I was really, the world was making me anxious. It was making me OCD. By 2014, 15, I had gone through a load of illness. I had had a thing called Graves' disease. I had had radioactive treatment. I'd had years where I got down to 8.5 stone. I don't know how much, is something like 60 kilograms or 50 something kilograms. I was
Yeah,
so
14
I was
pounds to
on
start.
my way out by 27. I was on my way out, and the doctors weren't diagnosing me with the disease I had. So I went through, when they finally did, I went through a load of different. I kind of I ended up having so much happen, and I felt so sad, and the world was so sad that I just wanted to finish it. Really, I didn't want to be here anymore. And then I sat and I thought, okay, right, if I want to check out, then the best way forward is to instead do the thing that you're not meant to do. Which I thought, okay, I'm going to take mushrooms for 3 months, and if I come out the other side, without that feeling like I want to die, then that'll be good. That'd be a good start.
I
But
always
if
thought that, like, if I felt like that, just get the biggest credit card you can possibly get, go wherever you wanted to go, and see if at the end of that, you don't feel a
Yeah,
little better.
well, I did. I mean, at the end of it, I had a fair few different realizations in life. I had some really big moments. And I realized straight away after that experience, I realized I was an investigative journalist and I was hiding away from it, because I knew that the thing I wanted to investigate was really scary stuff, was really horrific stuff, was really sad stuff. And I there was no reason why I didn't. If my fear was, if I wanted to die, and my fear otherwise is I don't do that in case I die, then it's just it's the same result anyway. So why not go a little forward and see what happens? And since then I've been a journalist. Since then I've gone on an
Yeah.
experience. I've gone on a ride, and so I don't think it's necessarily courage. I systematically took away my fear of being killed by someone, garroted in an alleyway, or murder. I just took away that fear, and I keep saying, okay, I kind of handed myself over to a bigger. I'm not a secular person, I'm outside religion. Sorry, I don't necessarily go with a religious order. I got brought up in Church of Wales, which is a very bland Protestant sort of. You go to church and you say thank you and please and all of that. And you do Sunday school and everything. It's really a way for parents to have a babysitters more than it is to worship a religion. But still, I mean, I have a rich feeling of the Almighty, you could say. I realize that, especially through my experiences, I realize is something bigger than me, us, the world we live in, everything that we got. I don't know how to describe it. I feel that it's arrogant, self-centered, self-serving, to try and label what I feel about my relationship with whatever Almighty exists. I just know that there's one rule. One rule. You get on the wave and you do good things, and the wave will take you to the next thing you have to do. And then if you want anxiety in life, the anxiety is not knowing what you're meant to do. And if you get on the wave, and the wave will just take you, and you will go to the next place, and you will be shown. And my life now has been, for the past 10 years, a collection of serendipitous experiences that have led me to every single next stage. And later on, I can see why I was there and why it was necessary for me to be there to take on the next challenge. Whether that is divine, whether we're all just a simulation, whether whatever way you want to translate that as a human being makes no difference. It is what it is, always. And the one thing I learned from studying every religion I could was don't worry. Worry is wasted energy. You just got to get. I'm known around my area, around my community. I'm known by everyone, and a lot of them know me as the most calmest, coolest person around. You know, I just go around. I'm always got a smile for someone, even if the world's going upside down. I've always got time to spend with someone, and I try to live a life where I don't worry. And for that helps with journalism, especially when you're going into the darker areas where most people say. I get multiple times a week. I get people saying, "Oh, should you do that? Because are they just going to kill you?" And it's, well, the next step is the next step. And I've survived so far. So if I lived life of fear, I would do nothing in life. And I would enter into the matrix and I would be the last man. You know, I would be Nietzsche's last man. I would be there at the end. Instead, I am embracing the absurd, like Sartre or Camus would have you think is best. I'm looking around and I'm saying, I'm going forward, see what's there. It's not really courage, it's a lack of fear. So I think they're slightly different things, because I still feel like, you know, if I actually thought about it, maybe I wouldn't do any of it. But a lot of it is just like, you just got to get rid of your fear, because your fear stops you living life, and living life is fucking amazing. Just got to say that.
My mother always said that I would worry about this and worry about that, and these evil, cabal taking over the world, and she would say, I don't know what you're worried about. God is up in his heaven. He's just watching it go round. It's all unfolding according to his plan. So it is an act of faith to just live your life. And we have the parable of the talents. We have callings, vocations. And I agree with you. You have to follow that, which is why I hate highly regulated industries. And I hate the government, the cabal tying up entire areas of work, from journalism to banking. I used to be a banker. But these are our vocations. This is what fulfills us. And I feel the same way. I pray often for, or I used to, but now I feel like I found it, a path, direction. Like I have the courage to walk the path. If it's very clear what I'm supposed to do, I will do it. And we have these talents. And I agree with you. Like I tell my kids, the only real sin, or you can gauge sin by, if you know you should do one thing and you do not do it, or you should avoid something you don't. If you know that and you do it anyway, that I would call it a mortal sin. Like you have to do what you are called to do.
And there's an opposing factor to that as well. If you know you've got a call in and you refuse to go down that route, that is a sin. That is also the same sort. It's not in the same realm, but it's the same end product. You end up with, like, you've got a gift, you've got loads of gifts. You know what? Every person who's watching this knows deep down where they're meant to go and what they're meant to do. And they know the one rule behind it. You do good things, you're nice to people, you do well, and what you get back is something that looks like love. It's not something that looks like hate. You've got to realize there's a lot of people out there, some really awful people, who will make you feel like you want to give away and relinquish that feeling of love and embrace hate. And they're very good at doing it, and you just don't have to have them in your life. You can, as a person, as a human being, say, I'm going to live by this principle. I will do nice things to everybody, and in that way, it will let me see who does nasty things to me. And as soon as that happens, and I'm not, that's not part of my existence. You have your own journey to go on. You're nowhere near the path that I'm on. So we're not walking together. That's life. Life, you have to find people who will lift you up, who will give you a ability to be yourself and to go down the road of destiny. And who knows where destiny is? Who knows?
Well, you have one feature that there are a few people like that. I can think of three, and I always point this out when they're on my show. real professional level journalism on our side. And you're never getting a real job doing that. I know a guy who got fired from his journalism job. I know a guy who got fired from his professor job. And you similarly are just not going to get paid for this kind of work unless you compromise. So that's why when I was like halfway through your latest articles, I decided to become an annual supporter on Substack, I think it was. I just feel like for people like you, you kind of should pay for what you're getting. For me, it is a labor of love. I like to cover my costs, but for you, you're a pro.
Do you know one thing? And I try not to have a cry when I say this, but like I live a really I know I live a really difficult life. I self-impose. I do this. I choose to do this, and I say for a living, and it's not for a living because I don't make a living. I just don't make a living. And every time someone does, and the same yesterday, I have a cry because someone is actually supporting me in doing something that I feel like I need to do. And it's few and far between. I know there's loads of people who get boosted up or who've got lots of supporters. I don't have that same thing. A lot of people, I think, view my work and think, God, he can handle himself well, so good on him. And that's good, but I can't make a living out of this. This isn't something that's done for the want of greed or want of loads of cash. But I've never been that person anyway. I grew up with in this very stingy family.
Oh, really?
Where my dad was he earned well. My dad was a steel worker. He was a wire tester in Allied Steel and Wire in Cardiff Bay. And he earned well, but he spent all of his money on philandry.
Oh,
he just philandered all of the way. And 17th century costumes as well.
I was going to say, but you did all that medieval stuff. Isn't that like rich people shit?
Yeah, well, it was not cool, rich people's. It was drunk people's shit.
Got it.
It was
that
lots
does
of
sound
people.
like the one very special thing that
I tell you, 8,000 people on a campsite from Thursday to Monday, dressed up in 17th century costume with a beer tent that fits about 3,000, all partying all weekend, non-stop drinking from the moment you arrive to the moment you leave. Everybody is wildly having fun like it's the 17th century, and there's two big battles. There'll be two major battles, one on a Sunday, one on a bank holiday Monday or a Monday if it was a holiday time. And they were enormous battles, proper, amazing to watch. 8,000 people on the battlefield is pretty cool. It's like you got smoke going across the field from the amount of cannons going off. You got horses, hundreds of horses running around. It was a beautiful experience, a really beautiful experience. But my dad spent all of his money on buying claymores. Like, I'm not talking about exploding mines. I'm talking about proper swords from the past. Rapiers. He was a town crier, a professional town crier as well. And he would only have the best, because in the sealed knot was lots of people, like a woman named Annie Farnsworth, who's one of the best costume designers you could possibly come across. So they were so ornate and so wonderful, and he loved to spend his money on that. So I've never really had money, so I don't really miss it. So it's fine. When back in the day, I always worked jobs like night manager in hotels and stuff. I used to gamble when I was young as well. So you learn to live without money if you're a gambler, because you spend your money very quickly.
That's the worst waste. But I had a thought when I was thinking about like how hard it is to scrape out a living. And I used to make pretty decent money I kind of was there. I had a radio show, and I noticed when I was doing that I couldn't find any real news. I could only find mainstream media news. So I had to figure everything out on my own. So I recognized there was a need for a kind of daily news show. And so I was a little bit of, I would say, a pioneer in that kind of daily news podcast. And because of that, I got a lot of support. A third of the stuff was behind a paywall. I had a good system working. And I don't now. It just was too much work. I couldn't do it and raise a family. But I also think that I would never have been able to make that money if I started it now, because the field is so crowded. And it just occurred to me when you were talking that maybe that's one of the reasons that the alt media space is now absolutely full of feds. It serves several
Full of
purposes.
it.
One is it floods the zone. So a fed, like, they will give you 99% of what they're saying is true. And then one thing is the thing that's supposed to fuck with you and that you're supposed to get wrong. So they flood the zone. They absorb all the resources. So people will support them because they do great work and they're constantly pushing for that. And they crowd out real journalists because because the real journalists can't really get the kind of publicity or promotion that'll get them the followers and then the subscribers. So it's not a good situation. And I feel like just think hard about who you're supporting.
There is no point in me actually doing what I was doing 2 years ago, going out trying to reach people with stuff, because they're not watching, because they're all retweeting the exact same thing that they're only allowed to retweet once the MSM is allowed to report on it. So what happens now
like
is all
Nick
of
Fuentes and Tucker Carlson, like that completely
they're the
absorbed everyone's
MSM
attention for days. I even think like they released the Epstein files. We know about we understand what's going on. Like we've known it, and your work especially, we've known it. Like there's a lot of other things. The powers that be have moved past that story. So the more that you're
totally flooding the zone.
Yeah.
Matthew Harrington said it during event 201. He worked for Edelman PR. He's one of the big boys for Edelman PR. And he said, the best way to handle this is just to flood the zone with information. And then that's what we saw during that pandemic period, is that flooding of the zone. And now influencers have filled that. I mean, I think that's part of what happened during the pandemic, is that these guys who knew what they wanted to form used that as a way to form these bulk influencers who all released basically the same tweet, the same photo, the same article, all at the same time. If you go down the For You part on Twitter, For You, and you go through it, and it's the same picture over and over again by the same influencers who are all paid by the same people.
And then I feel bad that I don't follow that stuff, because I'm like, I don't have time for that. If you guys
I've seen behind the curtain. I've seen behind the curtain there. I've seen behind the curtain there. I've seen how they do it. I was offered money to do the same thing. Yeah, and I refused it. So I'm people who know my work and people who understand what journalism is should know is that I get told, I get told very regularly, are you sure you should do this? When I say I'm going to do something,
they act like normal people. They act like they're fans and supporters sometimes. Like they will
but even in general life, when people find out what I'm going to do, so for instance, at the beginning of the week of last week on Monday, I put in a letter before action to Nicole Youngkerman's firm, NJF Capital, saying I'm going to sue them for $1.5 million and a load of other things for censoring me systematically for 6 years, for using strategic litigation, for using false DMCA takedowns. And not only have I got a bit of evidence, but I've got all of the evidence. So I'm completely confident that I can win in that case. A week later, exactly a week later, I get a call asking me to go to the Vatican. Now, Nicole Youngkerman, her husband is Count Ferdinando Brichetti Peretti, an Italian of the head of API Oil in Italy, the biggest oil firm in Italy. He's one of the richest men. He's a Knight of Malta. He's black nobility, all of that stuff. And their kid got baptized in the Vatican. So the idea that a week after that happens, I want to go to the Vatican sounds mad. So I'm going to go. Because I'm a habitual curtain looker.
I'm worried for you.
I look round the curtain. Yeah, but I mean, I've got to have faith in the same way. Talking about this might be the most convenient way. Yeah. I've got to have faith that the people who come to me and have said that are telling the truth and are honest and are saying to me, we want to talk to you. And the person who wants to talk to me is someone who's very, very focused on Gaza. Yeah. They're doing a lot. They've got a platform. They've got an important platform, but they want to talk to me about what I can help them do. And that would be something, I've had a feeling from the beginning, from October the 7th, I get a feeling that I'm going to that region eventually. I had like this sense of it, that I if I'm going to fight against Israeli Unit 8200 companies, the Mossad, etc., then we're better to do it than the Middle East. So I get a feeling that that's leading me towards that. But I got to loads of people who say, yeah, but the one ad one is they're linked to the Vatican. People are suspicious of the Vatican, so you'd be crazy to go to the Vatican. But then, I spent a long time doing war games, strategy games when I was young. My dad was very much into that, as I told you. We used to sit down and we used to play an advanced form of Risk together a lot. A
young
game
men
called,
are very good at that. I have a son.
Yeah. I used to destroy all of the adults in the room because they kept doing the same thing that history had taught them to do, and I used to do it differently.
Yeah.
And that is the big difference, is that, but generally I'm a war gamer. So I realize that you don't win a war without going onto the battlefield, and you don't win a war with being fearful about the next step. You have to go and just walk out into fire. Sometimes you have to go across no man's land. It's just the way it works. So I get told very regularly when things happen to me, you shouldn't do that. That's dangerous. And that's the opposite of what I am. I'm a habitual curtain looker. I look around the curtain. So when Mario Narwhal people, the people who are adjacent to Elon Musk, they basically head up the X spaces that are. The first time I ever went on their X spaces, I ended up central to the Epstein X spaces in January, where it was millions of people on some of them. I mean, it was a crazy amount. And some of the people who I were fans of when I was young were in the crowd and stuff listening. And I became like center to and they were like, I was on there for like 4 or 5 hours because I know loads of the information. Yeah. No one could come on and lie, because I would say, oh, well, that's not true. That's not. So they all ended up just sitting and mostly listening to what I was saying about the case. And I realized, oh, this is a load of power. But they seemed very powerful people. They were, when I first entered into the room, the person who was in the room, the very first one, was clearly, it was Adrian Dittman, clearly Elon Musk with a voice changer, and he was organized. It was right at the start when they're trying to launch X Spaces, and it was clearly Elon Musk. And this is while I was investigating Musk too. And I get a feeling that they invite me into these things to see if they could turn me. See, they treat me like everybody else, and they don't do their research first, because their research would tell them that I'm probably not going to be easy to control or manipulate. Yeah. But they would also tell them that I'm a habitual curtain looker. So they kept coming to me with more and more things. They kept offering me stuff. They offered me money for doing stuff. And some of it was really benign. It was the lead-in. It was the hook. Yeah, you get the hook.
I would say almost all of it is true and fine. And all they have to do is tell you, do not say this one thing. It used to happen to me on the radio. So it would say say whatever you want, but don't say that this is one thing. Don't say you're positive that this is what happened. Don't say that you're positive. Say that you guess. And I'm like, but I am positive.
The first time that they came to me and they came to me.
Oh, no. Did I lose? Hold on.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yep.
Did you lose my sound?
No, I got you now.
Okay. If the sound goes funny, tell me. I might have to.
It's it's a little funny.
It's a little funny. Wait a minute. Sorry. To apologize about this.
Oh, that's perfect.
Is that perfect?
Back. Yeah, 100%
That's back. 100% back. Okay.
See, if it changes, you need a new mic. You need a new little connector. I can't afford
bloody anything. I don't get paid for anything I do.
Don't. If you are tempted to support me on this show, don't support me. Support Johnny.
Thank you.
It's by Johnny and Mike.
Again.
Can someone do a one-time contribution to buy you a mic, or do they have to subscribe? How would they?
Oh my God! If they want to just come to me and say, "Listen, let me buy you a new mic, so you can," I will happily buy a mic and give them the receipt.
How should someone communicate that with you?
They just message me. Go to Newspaste at the bottom of newspaste.com. There is the fill out the form. It goes straight through to my email. You can get me on DMs in Twitter or X. You can get me anywhere, and I will talk back. I'm one of the most interactive people.
I can't believe you come on my show. I'm like, this guy is You know you're going to the
Crazy. For me, that's
Vatican.
crazy. That's crazy. And so
I'm not going to the
anyway,
Vatican.
so
But I have a specific question I want to ask you. Go ahead,
okay.
finish what you're saying, and then I'm going
I
to
was
ask
just
you
going to say,
something very
so the
awesome.
first time these guys came to me, and they offered me some money. They said, "We'll pay you this amount for this many tweets, blah de blah de blah." And I was like, "Oh, okay then." But they didn't tell me what they wanted me to tweet. So I said, "All right, give me the money then." They gave me the money. Then they said, "We want you to tweet this." And I said, "No, don't be silly. I don't agree with that." And what they wanted me to post up was like being really pro about AI, their new AI bot. Oh, Olivia's great. She's wonderful. It got me the ability to go and look at who was on the page of this AI bot and who at that same time it was what's their name? The Krasensteins were there. All of the guys were there being retweeted on the wall. They were paying all of the big boys money to be all positive about this AI bot. Olivia AI is amazing. So I had a different idea, and they didn't know I had a different idea. So they came to me and they said, "Hey, you got to, could you tweet these?" And I was like, "No, I'm not going to tweet those." And he said, what will you tweet? And I said, "Okay, I'll show you what I'll tweet." And what I said was so negative towards AI that they were like, "Oh no, we can't do that."
Did they take money back? How could they get
no, I was like, "Oh well, you should have probably checked but what you bought before you bought it."
Yeah.
And they said, "Okay, can you be a bit nicer?" So I basically did this vague tweet that said, basically, you got to be careful of what this thing is. It's basically an octopus, and it's going to devour you. It's the best they could get out of me. And wait. They said, "Okay, then don't fill out the rest of the contract that we gave you or the rest of the things. Just interact with the bot and we'll just call it quits." And that's what they said, because I would not do what they wanted. Yet they still come back to me over and over and over again. And they were trying to get me to do loads of different things, and I wouldn't do that. I go on their spaces and stuff, but they were coming back through me, through the Mario Narwhal space. It was all through the Mario Narwhal space. I wanted to do something else. I wanted to make their AI video bot woman, I wanted to make her the official AI of Truth Bomb, so that I could put people against their AI.
Wow!
And
yes,
I could
that's a great idea.
Exactly. So I wrote up an entire proposal for them. And they shit themselves and they ran off.
Yeah, they're like, "We are going to sue you for using it for that." But so here, I'm figuring something out now. My guess is very few people actually get money. What happens, it looks to me, is if you engage in the stuff that somebody who has an interest in it wants you to engage in, so you retweet their stuff and they have people retweet your stuff. So like I've had people on my show who have PR agents, and my interviews with them are like 10 times my normal like views. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, somebody's pushing this out." And that's the kind of quid pro quo. I don't do that. Like if somebody asks me, "This guy has a book," I'll like read the book, and I mean 1 in 100 will be like, "Okay, I'll do that." But I think that's how people get like snowballing into much, much higher profile stuff, which then has value because they can have commercials or whatever. But it's not everybody has to have a contract and a money change hands.
It took those people a while to understand that there was no way they could deal with me. There was just no way. There's no point. And anyway, my X account is super hyper limited because I revealed all of the Epstein Musk connections in the 2 main articles, and I used X for that. I actually released. I'm probably going to sue X, start legal action against X soon, because 4 days before the election, I released the Third Culture, the Musk Epstein article on X. They sent me a tag saying, "We've limited your profile because we think you're spamming." And then 10 days after the election, they re-put it up and they said, we've discovered you're not spamming, so we're going to put it back up. So
Too little,
they
too late.
held
Yeah.
it down as long, and they've changed the numbers, they've manipulated the numbers, and I've tracked the data, so I'm able to prove that what it's basically doing is censoring journalism by acting as a publisher. But there's what I can do is I can request all of the details about how they've used my data when making a decision to censor me. Yeah. And if they can't answer those questions, or they can't give that information to me, they will be fined 4% of global turnover, annual global turnover. So they have to really, and I can do it through a law, through a mechanism where I only have to pay $100, and it opens up discovery in the court system in America, which means I can add things onto discovery, and they can be used in other court cases.
So there are laws now. When in 2018. The internet died on February 14th, 2018. I knew it that day because I was trying to investigate the Parkland shooting and Sheriff Israel in Florida, which was probably not something you were getting into at that time. But prior to that, I could always do a lot of research. There was Live Leak. There was just stuff on YouTube. I could always crack the code overnight. That day when that happened, I had a show and I had to do research, and all of my like YouTube for you stuff was CNN. You know, it was just completely gone. It was scrubbed in that moment. And I was like, oh, the internet died this week. Sorry. But what I didn't see coming was that just over the next 6 months, they cascaded into taking me down off of YouTube, taking my website down, destroying all the information research. It was so demoralizing. I never blogged again, not out of like principle, but I just never blogged again. And I thought, my husband said, well, you should sue them because you had what they were taking you down for is something that was in the public domain, that you had fair use, you had a business account, they couldn't just destroy all your data, blah, blah, blah. I've had lawsuits before. I had one time I was involved in a lawsuit. Such a horrible experience. I would never, ever do that. And that would have been at the time, would have had to go through basic principles like this is a public place. This is where if you use patent protection in the courts, then you have to recognize this as a public place and you can't use censorship or whatever it would have to be. But I was going to have to make like a first order argument on the Constitution. But now, especially in Europe, they have laws and it's clearly defined what you can and can't do. So hopefully you'll have more success. And I just didn't
there's the actual legal wrangling I'm going into now is relatively only available to me relatively recently. A lot of anti-SLAPP laws. SLAPP is SLAPP. It means strategic litigation against public participation. And this is basically what all of these platforms have been doing. Yes. They're nuisance suits. Bowing. Nuisance. Yeah. They've been bowing to strategic litigation. So they will take in my case, let's look at my case with the big NJ in the Epstein case. They've got troubles now. They've got troubles. They're going to have a hard time censoring me now because they know everything that they're censoring me is going on the evidence wagon. Nice. And the evidence wagon is 6 years old. It's full of stuff. And it's across multi-platform, and I have their emails to companies where they're lying, they're not signing correctly, they're not using the legal terms correctly, and the companies are taking them down anyway just because that's what they do. They just bend their knee to the masters every single time, and that's got to end. So anti-SLAPP laws have come in all across Europe. There are different versions in America and in Britain. And I'm going to be using anti-SLAPP legislation because a lot of what they've been doing for 6 years is in 2019 was the first time Nicole Junkermann took an interim injunction against me in a regional Berlin court. And I wasn't meant to know about this. I shouldn't have known about it. I know, isn't that bizarre? I only knew about it because the court accidentally sent me the receipt, the receipt that said I had to pay for 2/3 of Nicole Junkermann's legal costs for her taking out an interim injunction against me. But that interim injunction is meant to lead to a defamation case. You only take out an interim injunction as an interim moment before an actual case. She then goes to YouTube and says, you have to take down the read-throughs and the conversations about my relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. This, because it isn't journalism, she says, of course. You have to take those down, and because I'm taking him to court. Look, I have an interim injunction. They take it down. He doesn't take me to court. Next time they want to take down a video, the video goes up. They take out another interim injunction against me, not intended to take me to court, strategic litigation, complete. Like in the Substack, when they applied to Substack recently and had 4 of my posts taken down, which have now all been put back. I've put every single one of them back.
Wow.
She didn't win this time, because what I did and what they weren't expecting was I applied to Substack for all of the information they sent, which I'm allowed to have under law. And within that information, I was able to prove that, number one, they didn't properly follow the legal terminology, etc., to actually have them taken down. The accusations they have about copyrighted and defamation materials within the articles, none of the pictures they claimed were in the articles were there. Only one was, and all of the rest of them, they said he's using this in this article, he's using this in this article. None of them were there. Substack didn't even check. They took them down just based on the complaint. The actual, what they did is they released to me all of the full email from Michael Oakes, who works for NJF Capital. I'm not sure how long he's going to work for NJF Capital after this, because he messed up. He admitted they had taken out interim injunctions against me in the Berlin Regional Court 5 times over the past 6 years to have my stuff removed, and they've never taken me to court for defamation. Pure strategic litigation. 8 videos have been taken down from YouTube. Trying to deal with YouTube is terrible. So I've requested all my data from YouTube's legal team now via mail. I've sent it direct in the mail, so they have to respond, because you can't get them by email at all. I'm suing Rumble. I've sent them a letter before action because they took down the free Youngkerman read-throughs. When they asked for them to be taken down, they hadn't filled out any of the details. It was not a valid takedown request legally. It had to say certain things. It had to be signed by someone, a name. It was just a legal representative of Nicole Youngkerman. And they took them down instantly, and they didn't inform me. They have to inform me, so I have 10 to 14 days to respond to the claim, and then if they prove they've taken out court action against me, then it gets taken down. Instead, they didn't inform me. Rumble, I only noticed 2.5 months later that the videos weren't there, because I was checking the links in one of my articles. And then I went to him, and me and Chris Pavlovsky, the CEO of Rumble, had a backwards and forwards on X, where I basically accused him of censorship, and he was like, oh, well, now you can do it. And it was like, well, it's too late to do it now. Yeah. You've just got to reinstate them. They didn't reinstate them until a couple of weeks ago. I've sent a letter before action to Rumble in the US. They're based in Florida, and told them I'm going to sue them as well. And because...
Boy, how many people do actually pursue it? I mean, you're setting precedents. Like, that's how are you paying for that? Who's doing this legal work for you?
Right.
You're doing it yourself?
Okay, here we go. Number one, I'm partially doing it myself. That is possible only because of the technology that exists nowadays.
Right.
I mean,
you're such a good researcher.
So you combine everything. When you do something like this, you have to combine everything. Research, you have to write it up, then you have to go to a legal professional and say to them, blah, 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 what do you think to this? But I've got lots of contacts, lots of people around who agree, this is something that needs to be done. So happy to look over a letter quickly and see and make sure that I am hitting the right points. AI, administratively, don't let it choose your morals and ethics for you, but administratively, you can do so much with that. You can find out every law down to a T. You can look at every single case. And if you then look at what the point is, you can start to understand what law is. I'm probably going to start studying law at Cardiff Law School next year, and I'm probably going to start getting my legal license, and I'm going to start going for each one of these companies one by one professionally as I can. But with the start, what you do is you start off with the blunt end of the stick, you could say, but it's not that blunt. The litigation you can take at very small cost. If I wanted to take them to court and sue them for defamation, it's going to cost me 20,000, 30,000. If I can prove they've used strategic litigation against me, they're going to end up having to pay for absolutely everything anyway, and they will have to give money to the court when a judge rules that does look like strategic litigation to pay for the entire case beforehand. But there are other things that you can do beforehand. For instance, the Copyright Association in America, if they're using DMCA stuff against takedowns against me, then I can go to the Copyright Association, pay $100 and get a case with them with no extra charges at all. There are starting points that you can go through, but and you can do a lot of this with just the cost of a stamp. A lot of the action you can take will just cost you a stamp and a load of time research.
Many hours, yes.
So after this builds up enough, I've had 6 years of them strategically litigating against me with the biggest height. When I saw what Michael Oakes wrote down to Substack, I was like, this guy has done them all. This, as a judge, this would be wild to look at. This is strategic. This is admitting all strategic litigation, and it's so brutally, horribly ignorant of journalism. And that is a really important part.
They're underestimating you again, by the way.
Well, good.
That's your secret weapon.
Keep doing it. It is. Every time it happens, I'm going to just keep going forward with the litigation stuff. So I've got about 5 or 6 things. I'm applying for data from German courts. I'm applying for my data from YouTube. I'm applying for my data from Rumble. I'm applying for the data used by NJF Capital. That will cause them a hell of a lot of trouble because they've been sending out nasty emails to me, and they've got about me to companies, and they've got to actually supply all of those emails to me because it's my data that they processed.
Of course, they don't want to sue you for defamation because the defense against that is truth. So if they would have to prove that you're wrong, I believe is how
those
work.
articles I wrote about
are right. I think
perfect. They are perfect.
And then
I sourced them up the wazoo.
Yeah, that these people, then they're in a terrible pickle of proof.
Not with strategic litigation laws. It's different now. Even they have to do even more. As soon as a judge sees that they have used strategic litigation, they are responsible for everything, and I can go to the highest courts and they have to pay. Everything.
Do you get punitive damages? So, like, in addition to all your pain and suffering or all your time lost, they give you 5 times what the actual damages are because they want people not to do it. That I would be surprised if it's not in there. Yeah.
Gotta be honest. I think they're probably going to try and kill me first. I gotta be honest. I know I say that with Jolly.
How about settle? They should try to settle first.
it would be nice if
don't kill me. I'll take the money. Like you gotta say that. I don't think 3 times and click I
don't think they. I think they've reached the end now. The sign that they so. What I did was something it's very sad. You have to know the whole situation. I was really savvy with what I did with the response to Substack. I was waiting for them to take down the Substack articles. I put all my work onto Substack. Substack is about the best way to be supported because people can take out yearly subscriptions and stuff, and that's like wildly like for me, like every week, probably once or twice a week, people take out some sort of subscription. Someone takes out one where they pay £8 a month. $8 a month, so also or the equivalent of £50 or a pound or £80 for the whole year, and that is just like that feeds me, that keeps me alive and keeps me going and keeps me fighting this fight. So it's so important. It's such an important platform. So I was like, all right, if they're going to go in for me, I've got to start what I'm going to do now from this point on. As soon as they took it down, I was so ready and so prepared. I got all of the information really quickly, and I published the information on Substack. So I explained on
That's one
Substack,
way to do it.
detailed what my response would be, what they had done, what laws they had broken, and I made it very clear that if they were, and they knew that this was happening, they knew that this happened, that if they then attempted to use an interim Berlin court injunction to have these taken down and removed permanently, that they would be proven again for the sixth time that they're willing to take me on without suing me for defamation, and I'm going to go at them for slap legislation anyway.
Pay a lawyer if you're going to really go to court, though.
Eventually, yes. No, but eventually, yes. Eventually, it's got to get there. But there's a route there, and the route is, first of all, there is loads of mechanisms to make it so that they eventually have to pay for any costs, so you can get a lawyer, and they're paying for it anyway. Full stop.
Yeah,
they're not going to win in court. They're not going to win in court. If there is a wealthy benefactor out there who wants a massive strategic litigation case under their belt and wants to be known as supporting something, hey, help me out. We can go in against them, and we're going to win. This is no doubt about it. This is do you know who her advisor is? Her new advisor at her firm was the key advisor for Lord Jacob Rothschild.
Whoa.
That is her main advisor now. He had just only 2024 did he, of course, when he popped it, did he leave the employ of Jacob Rothschild and start helping out Countess Ferdinando Bracetti Peretti.
This is the lawyer who did a sloppy job?
No, this is another one. This
advisor,
is her. This is they can't. No, okay, here we go. This is another thing. That was Michael Oakes. Michael Oakes was like, I don't know, is head of sales or something like that. I can't remember what his official title is at the moment. Michael Oakes isn't a trained legal professional because this is vexatious legal behavior, and it means they would have their license taken away. So they cannot have any lawyers take me on. Because if they have to use underhand tactics like they have to do it with people who can't lose their legal license. So in this case, it's not me who doesn't have any legal advice in that sense. It's them who doesn't have any legal advice. They are making all of their actions through people who are not trained in law, because if they'd use the people in, because the people who are trained in law who work for their company, they're not going to have anything to do with this because it'd be vexatious litigation, right, and they can have their license taken off them. So that's it. You know, if you understand the context of how everything works, then you go, so they're super fucked. They got real problems. So I can start anywhere. You know, when you're just a crow and it's a big carcass down on the ground, it doesn't realize it's a carcass yet and is dying, you can still get in there and get some stuff. Or if you're a vulture, you can still get in there and get some stuff. You start picking away at it. After a while, there will be no fight back. After a while, it is just food. That's the way I see it. What I'm seeing is she has failed. She has failed to cover it up. She has failed to hide her relationship with Epstein. I have fought her for 6 years on every level, and now the only level left to fight her on, she's forced me into a corner.
Yeah,
publicly,
I mean, you
and
have
in court.
to assess. Like, that's what I'm saying. They underestimated you. But I wanted to. I know. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Go on, what were you
sorry.
say?
I thought you were saying hold on.
No, I was okay. Thumbs up. I was
okay.
Yes, they underestimated me. Yeah. Let's get it on. Yeah.
But I want you to give me one little tidbit of deep truth based on all of the research you've done. It's rather a salacious topic. It's not a deep principled position like what you're doing with the litigation, but I saw something crazy, and you're the only person who I think can make any sense of it whatsoever. I saw this video released posthumously of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, and I cannot make heads or tails of that crazy thing. Can you help illuminate that for me?
Well, okay. So I've not seen the video you're talking about, the posthumous video, but I can tell you.
Well, she's supposedly dead, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
supposedly.
What is it all about?
Okay, so let me go back to the start when I first started doing looking into Epstein stuff. When I first started doing this research, she was like hero level. All of the girls were hero level to me. I couldn't even use my analytical mind. I couldn't use my logical mind on it. I was completely and utterly captivated with the bravery and courage. Mm-hmm. So you know,
I agree totally. Yeah, and her lawyer, I remember for my show, we talked to her lawyer a couple of times, Brad Edwards, and he was super helpful.
Oh, I bet he was. Bet he was.
But then later, I was like, he seemed kind of sketchy. So, in retrospect,
I had I was with Whitney Webb. We were living in Cardiff. I'd already had Maria Farmer get in contact with me, and she was already in contact. She had done the interview with Whitney Webb back in 2019, and it had gone a bit wild, and she had said loads of stuff in there. A lot of it was like really like trope-like anti-Semitic stuff, which I think was the key to them like trying to seed in a certain narrative or certain language into the independent media so that it would end up being undermining the actual arguments that are being made, because the arguments were valid, that there was lots of high-level Jewish corruption happening, Israeli corruption happening in the streets of America. Why, of course, it always has, hasn't it? And it always probably will. America's full of naughty people of all ilks, that's for sure. But this was a very, I became very, I had an inside view. I was asked by Whitney Webb for One Nation Under Blackmail to specifically focus in on the victims. And nearly everything that I wrote did not go in the book, either of the books. They were left out. Actually, only probably about 15% of what I researched, because it was inconvenient truths. Lots of inconvenient truths all over the place. I mean, from the first off, in 2013, the FBI go and ask Virginia Giuffre in Australia. They question her about the Epstein case. It's clear that the Epstein case is going to go further and the rest of it is coming out eventually. Virginia Giuffre returns back to America. The day she returns back, she's met by Bradley Edwards, who you mentioned. Bradley Edwards, at this point, has his own firm that's winding up slowly with a couple of other business partners. It's slowly.
I remember there was something really kind of fishy going on after that.
Well, eventually. I didn't. Yeah, eventually, definitely. So in 2014, Bradley Edwards meets Virginia Giuffre from the plane. They talk about what they're going to do. Bradley Edwards goes home. 12 o'clock that night, he gets a call from Stan Pottinger, John Stanley Pottinger. Hey, you might not know me. I used to be an attorney general. I used to be attorney general. He used to work for the State Department in many different capacities during the Nixon administration. He's actually the guy who was central to covering up the assassination of Martin Luther King, Watergate, was heavily involved in the assassination of Orlando Letelier. That was a Pinochet CIA sort of link stuff too. Central to Wounded Knee, the Kent State Massacre, the narratives made up of those. He ran guns during Iran-Contra for the CIA. He was found out, and it was mentioned, and all of his conversation and communications with Cyrus Hashemi during the periods when they were organizing Iran-Contra and they were selling it to the CIA. It was their idea. That all came out in the October Surprise Task Force in the 90s. So Stanley Pottinger is this man who phones Bradley Edwards and he says, hey, Brad, hey, you might not know me, but blah-de-blah. This Epstein case, I'm representing one person who wasn't a person who could actually take a case because she had already settled in the previous case, but said, I got someone and I think we should work together. It would be beneficial for us. Bradley Edwards, in his book, Relentless Pursuit, says over and over again throughout it that from the first moment this happened, he knew it was the CIA. He went, he did research, he looked in, he was asked to meet Stanley Pottinger and David Bowies in their offices. Their offices were in the same building as Epstein's lawyers' offices. In actual fact, Stanley Pottinger lived 500 meters away from Jeffrey Epstein's House of Hell.
Yeah, we did a whole show on Stanley Pottinger when you wrote
it's
that
unbelievable
big article about
Bradley Edwards, all through his book, saying, I went to a shop to see if I could buy some spying equipment so I could record the conversation, because it was obviously the CIA, and I could tell it was the CIA, and Stan Pottinger was obviously a super spy for the CIA. So we formed a law firm together. Edwards Pottinger. And then later on, he's talking about the first time they meet Maria Farmer, and they're on the way back in the car, and he says to Stanley Pottinger, he says, Bradley Edwards looks at him and says, hey, you are the CIA though, aren't you? And he was like, he laughed, oh, if I'm the CIA, I'm the poor man's version of the CIA. And he said, and Bradley Edwards said, that was something that someone from the CIA would say.
Exactly.
And at the end of the conversation, he says, I don't, at that point, we were both laughing, and I wasn't sure if it was because we knew it was true. We both knew it was true or what, but it states that over and over again that the Winston Wolfe of the CIA was Stanley Pottinger, who became the representative for Virginia Giuffre nearly straight away as soon as she entered back.
So crazy.
Bradley Edwards believed that, and he says it in his book as well, that they had that Epstein had Virginia Giuffre's passport ping him if she came back into the country. And when it happened, that's why Stanley Pottinger instantly came on. So he also explains that it's a connection. So there's a problem there. Second problem, in that book especially, with Bradley Edwards, Virginia Giuffre's number one lawyer, dealing with her for years, is the secret meetings that Epstein and Bradley Edwards were having in Boca Raton Starbucks for years. For years, they claim they had other lawyers with them just to make it safe, but it doesn't say who it is. And I am got my tongue in cheek with that one. Bradley Edwards looks like he got into bed with the CIA when he admitted openly over and over again that this guy who he thinks is the CIA and looks like the CIA and definitely smells like the CIA, he became a business partner with and then benefited from the whole experience. And that came after I'd already looked into all of the witness statements, the court statements, everything. And I tell you one thing about Virginia Giuffre that comes to mind, and I don't want to speak ill of the dead, no one wants to, but I'm not going to hypernormalize either. Let's not go into that state of hypernormalization. Honestly, at this point, I don't care. I just don't care.
I
don't
get that. I totally get that.
I don't care if she's alive or dead.
A very like cartoonish.
They keep
psyop.
you over there. Yeah. So
like phase 3 of the psyop. It loses my interest too.
So this Virginia Giuffre, Maria Farmer, they all took the Alford plea so that they couldn't be prosecuted for crimes they definitely committed. So the plea means that they were probably targets for prosecution in the case if they did not take the plea and agree to be a state witness against Jeffrey Epstein. So let's start off. This isn't clean. This isn't someone who is a perfect victim in a box protected by victim status. This is someone who committed legitimate crimes that led to the sexual abuse of hundreds of girls. Okay. That being said, I feel really sorry that she was really young when she got targeted and groomed. She was like 16, 17. She was really impressionable girl. But there came a point where she was an adult. There's a story. There's one when I was going through all of the witness statements, when I was going through all of the testimony, when I was going through all of the things, and it was complicated because, the Epstein case ended with him dying. So they were able to give their own like statements at the end, but they didn't actually, nothing got put onto the record, which was the reason why part of the reason why Epstein had to die, because they didn't want these things on the record. The people gave their personal statements at the end of it. So the Ghislaine Maxwell case, they didn't need so much evidence, but we got a load of evidence. So I looked through all of that. And there's this one story that I think it changed my whole look on the case in general. It actually was the start that led me to investigating Stanley Pottinger after Maria Farmer tried to seed in this fake person who had like 8 different identities onto the podcast, onto Unlimited Hangout podcast. The behavior was suspicious. There's one story, and Virginia Giuffre picks up this girl who's been groomed by them. They've gone out. They found this girl. She's about 15 years old, 14, 15. And she's got her in the car, and it's just her and this girl. And she's driving this girl out to Epstein. And this girl says to her, I don't want to do this. Please, I don't want to go. I just don't want to. And Virginia Giuffre's words were dead as they come. Shut the fuck up. And she drove her into the estate, took this girl crying to Jeffrey Epstein. She started having sex with him in front of the girl and told the girl to do it and then left. That caused me issues, major issues. It was whether you like being what that is or not, you were that. If
Right.
you were that, then that's the problem. You can say we were groomed, manipulated, we were. Yeah. There's an end to this.
Yeah, you
narrative.
would have to start saying that you like a Charles Manson kind of situation where you were no longer had any will of your own, and that's a very hard thing to assert.
I think Epstein and Maxwell especially, it was kind of like a Manson family thing. The people who were in there, everyone from Leslie Groff, Sarah Kellen, lots of them. The pirate Larry Vysovsky, or however you say his name, I can never get it right. Nadia Masenko, Virginia Giuffre, all of these, Maria Farmer, all of these guys were doing a job. Even Maria Farmer, in her first statements, in her first interviews to the press, are like leaning forward and be like, yeah, and sending us out to supermarkets or whatever to groom girls or to get girls for him. And you have to understand the narrative got squeezed afterwards to be very careful not to talk about certain things. Now, Epstein and Maxwell, officially, they should have had the ability, it's indefensible, they should have had the ability under law to defend themselves in some way. And they were unable, it was clear they were unable to say, I think that's part of the reason the Bannon interview hasn't come out. Because they were unable to say a lot of what was going on when the media sphere was making these certain select group of women into the main front for all victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Let me say another thing. If Jeffrey Epstein was having 2 to 3 sexualized massages, that's what they were, the sexual massages, but there was obviously went from all levels, from the lowest intensity to full on hardcore horrible crap, like everything in the middle. That's 2 to 3 times a day over just a 10-year period. That would be 8,000 plus counts that could be prosecuted. You know, we have not seen anywhere near the level of understanding, the calculations, the math be used that would make punishment appropriate. And if we did, I think more people would want more people to be punished for their crimes. And from the off, that Alford plea meant that the press and everybody else had their victims that were the spokesman for all victims, and a lot of the other victims were told to remain silent, remain anonymous, and gave their evidence. And there was loads of voices that we did not hear, because this is how you micromanage cases. So when you ask who Virginia Giuffre was, like a poor girl, bad home, had a hard life, found a job with a wealthy benefactor. That job paid well. She had to do dark, really dark, awful stuff throughout that period. Eventually, she left it, even though that it would be negative financially for her. And she ran away from it all and hid away, and was rightly scared of this big billionaire who she knew all the secrets about. And eventually, the FBI come along and said, you realize that this is a criminal conspiracy. And she was given a choice. The choice was,
yes,
you're one of them or you're one of us. You work for
Right.
us, you give evidence, and you take the Alford plea. You will not be prosecuted for anything you've done. But if you don't,
and you can play the role of the victim,
yeah, we can.
which she
Literally,
was. I mean, I don't think there's
yeah.
any disputing that.
Both
this,
a victim and a perpetrator.
yeah. Which
So
is not the first time that's happened. And I mean, we even see that in life. Like, basically, that's always how people, isn't that how it works? Like, you get abused and then you abuse. Like, that's just
totally
that the chain.
There's a cycle. It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be that we understand how this all works. Anyway, I mean, Virginia Giuffre was able to be groomed because she had a cycle of abuse in her own home. That she had experienced abuse, and that is really negative. But we do this in trending media, especially, and it's really easy for influencers to do. We change history by making someone all of one thing or all of another. They're either good, they're all good, or they're all bad. And we take away all the nuance that teaches us all the lessons about what actually happened during these events. So Virginia Giuffre is very clear. Virginia Giuffre had loads of bad things happen, and she did loads of bad things. She was only the things that made her a victim she was judged for. The other stuff was purposely hidden, obscured, and people aren't allowed to speak about it, because if you speak about it, then basically you're on Epstein's side or something,
right,
because
of course,
people enter into dialectics that are really
abuse.
yeah, but it's simple. It's like there's a thesis and there's an antithesis, and what we're doing is watching the merger happen slowly as the constant manipulation. When I said that For You stream that comes off down on X or on Facebook or what, if you're looking at one of those and it's programming you notice that it's constantly saying, look at these victims, these are 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 victims. You don't need to be told 1,000 times. They're only telling you 1,000 times because it's a control mechanism. Whether they're victims or not, that is a control mechanism. When people use that against you, they're not good for your psychology, and you should stop watching them. You should probably mute them, hide their account, and not even bother seeing what they're doing, because you'll see it's repeated constantly down all of the lines, because people are being paid to push this, because the government does not want you to go down the route of seeing who really there's a load of victims under there who would have a load of different stories. That's the one thing that I did for, I was doing for One Nation Under Blackmail that never got published, and I ended up producing in the Epstein 101 series, was, having a look down knows the idea of what a victim is, what consent is, what these people were. You're looking at the nuance, looking at the context. As soon as you do that, everything changes.
Yeah, that makes me think about an article I read of yours about Epstein and Musk and transhumanism. And here is my question about that. So Epstein seems very clear to me. There was some kind of, intelligence thing or whatever, where, I mean, it's been a long time since I really engaged with the Epstein stuff, but the last I looked at it, seemed to me, You'd get some high profile guys in there. You'd get your girls. You'd bug the places. It was, he's Mossad or CIA or whatever it is. That I understand. But then they push out and say Epstein had his fingers in all these pies and he had impregnated all these people and transhumanism and everything. And that all seemed like too high level to me for Epstein. Like, I feel like you're at one level, you're at this level or at this level. But, that's why I don't even believe like Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, these people create a business in their basement and then run the biggest companies in the world. Like, people just aren't, those are different skill sets. So is Epstein also that high level? And even that thing with Elon Musk and the transhumanism, all Epstein really did was bankroll it, and he might have been a front for someone else doing that. Just, or you can tell me that no, he's the mastermind, whatever. But the article was fascinating.
No, I think that what you can, what I've seen when I've looked back through the history and all of the connections of all of these people, because there are many different connections between the journey, or within the journey of Henry Kissinger, Klaus Schwab, and Jeffrey Epstein. There's a lot of similarities, and those similarities are hard to not notice because they include bases like Harvard, where this sort of ideology were coming out. And one of the main point is leadership. Leadership. Epstein was the intelligence version of a young leadership mentor. You can see that. So when he first got together with Clinton in 1992, Clinton, he's this third way politician.
That was fascinating stuff. Yeah,
which is something that really helps the intelligence infrastructure. They're one of the entities that fills the gap when the third way politics gets incorporated. But Bill Clinton was a new guy. He was CIA's boy getting into the White House. In 1993, he gets in. For the next 2 years, Epstein is there with Mark Middleton 17 times, not for no reason at all. It was for something very important. They needed to make sure that the leaders of society were trained, groomed, and controlled correctly. Epstein's first point as an interlocutor, as a mentor, as all of these different things, was for the Democratic Party potential of presidential candidates. He was funding everyone who was a potential, the best leadership candidates. They had done all of their work. They had done all of their sampling. Loads of senators, congressmen, whatever, who were Democratic aligned. They're not very interesting. The public don't find them interesting. There's no chances for them. There's only a small pool.
Yeah, many are called and few are chosen.
Exactly. And who can we see come up after Epstein's time? Who can we see come up? Do they have links with Epstein? Bill Clinton, obviously clear links with Epstein. We know this. Al Gore, his running mate, he's been to the island. Of course, he has multiple links with Epstein in a sense because his two vice president nominations, potential vice presidents, were Joe Lieberman and Bill Richardson, and they ended up choosing Joe Lieberman, all funded and friends of Jeffrey Epstein. Then who's the next candidate that goes up in the next election that happens after Gore fails because of the hanging chads? Well, we go to John Kerry. John Kerry was being funded by Epstein. So was Chuck Schumer, of course, another potential leader. Only potential leaders. Who's going over his house? Who's going to meet Epstein? RFK Jr., who was a potential Democratic leader. These are all, everybody he was funding, everybody he was seeing were the people who at that period, they were like, he could be the next presidential candidate. We've got to mentor him. At the same time, they're looking into the future. They're seeing this is the third way politics is the gap that comes in between what we got now as some faux democracy, capitalist democracy, over to something which is a technocracy. And the third way politics is the gap in between it. So while Bill Clinton was the third way politician. Well, Tony Blair is going through leadership courses with the World Economic Forum and other things with Gordon Brown and others. So leadership candidates for other countries all going, but not in America. America, the leadership candidate for the one side for the Democrat Party, and this is going to be. I'm going to have to really. I mean, you have to know a couple of things that happen to be able to understand what I'm saying here. The Democratic Party candidates were being chosen by Epstein. And that is because I think Epstein was a representative of the CIA. And the CIA had been originally really in bed totally with the Republicans more than anything. And that the Republican sort of co-opting of the CIA through that time peaked at the leadership of Bush by the CIA in the late 70s. Then he becomes vice president and then eventually president with an attempt to, an attempt on the life of Reagan in between.
Trying to kill the president.
He was fucking head of the CIA. Crazy. I mean, you can't ignore that.
That's why you would never have like Hillary Clinton as your VP. Can't believe Nelson Rockefeller was somebody's VP. It's like, those are not people you want to have be motivated for your heart to stop beating.
So I think Epstein was the CIA's Republican-leaning representative controlling the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party was actually under the control. Yeah.
In more ways than one.
Precisely. Right? So the Republicans there hadn't been a proper leader since JFK. That's obvious. So throughout that, in rest of the time, it really is, how did the CIA pick leadership? Well, they did it by controlling the Democratic Party by using Jeffrey Epstein. And Jeffrey Epstein went in and basically chose all the leaders along with Clinton and others who worked for the CIA, and they funded them, they trained them, they gave them all of the connections, all of the opportunities, and by doing so, they made them the best choices that always, year after year, got chosen as the potential. The only break in between is Obama, and Obama's a bit of he's a hard one. I think it was the time where they were like, okay, this third way politics only works for a certain amount of time, and then you have to have a quick refresh and then start it up again, because otherwise people kind of like twig onto it. But Obama had a load of links with different entities like the CFR and stuff. So there's obviously he's in with the establishment, but he was a different type of candidate. We can probably, and most people can agree on that. But he was then doing something. There was another thing that comes, because this is a step towards the technocracy. So the other thing he was doing was choosing the selected CIA-approved leaders of the major technocratic firms. This had been started in the 80s with D.E. Shaw. D.E. Shaw knew when David Shaw set up that think tank, it was obviously he had come out of something where it was time to train the future leaders of a technology that the majority of people, the 99.99999% of people don't see coming. People didn't understand what the internet revolution meant, and these guys knew. And he trained up like the head of Download and the head of Amazon, and they basically installed straight into those. Yeah. These are our mechanisms for making loads of money.
I looked into like the top 10 tech guys one time. Like I just did a thing, like what are the top 10 American tech guys? And I found every single solitary one of them had an intelligence connection, pretty like 1 degree of separation. The only one I couldn't find was Steve Jobs. And then I later found that his birth father was a CIA operative in Syria. Isn't that crazy? His birth father, which supposedly he hadn't ever really had contact with, which will really, really make you think about the family thing. But can you imagine that?
If you're mapping out how to control a world, you come down to one point. You can do all of these tactics, but you need someone to do them and someone to lead them. You can have all of these entities, but you need someone to get to the top of them, so you remain in control of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
In politics, in general politics, we see how Epstein did that on the one side, probably on behalf of the Republicans to an extent, but it's really hard because Epstein was willing to be paid by
it's above
almost
the parties
anyone
at that point, I think.
In the same way, he was also doing the same with technocrat leaders. That was going to be the main future. The future wasn't going to be about who was Democrat and who was Republican.
What
Those
article was
times are
that in,
going
the third
behind.
way stuff?
And so
Was
there's
that the one that Musk
before the
Epstein
third
article?
culture, I wrote about Musk Epstein. There's one called Clinton Blair, the third way.
Yes, I was listening to that
yeah.
one. That was fascinating and so true. It's obviously true. And one thing that you said in that was you can't govern this new world in that old way. It doesn't work. You need a new governing mechanism. And once you said that, like all the wheels, just like the fight that we're fighting here in America to restore the Constitution, to have individual rights, really to look at the Bill of Rights and try to get that back. Neither side is defending those. Nobody's helping. And even when Trump first announced in 2015, I said, this guy never talks about the Bill of Rights. It's just out. It's just out. And
but the
and
mental
that just made it
state,
clear.
The mental state of the general population believes that we still live in a time which is well gone.
And you know what? The report from Iron Mountain, which I've like read 10 times and read to my people and had conversations about, the thing that came out of that in my mind was, if we eliminate the threat of war because of nuclear weapons, make it, seem impossible to actually take that step, what you do is undermine the existing hierarchy. And what we need to do is figure out if there's any other way to adapt government or society to maintain the existing hierarchy under a new technological regime. That really folds into what I got out of that article of yours. I'll have to read that again.
The issue that we got is like what we're talking about there, to finish off what we're talking about.
Yeah, go for it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
that's all right.
It's just like made the gears click.
I know. But once this is the thing about what I try and do as work, and I know for some people they're like, why can't you write a 500 or 1,000 word article that just tells me? Like, it's like you can't just tell people. You have to show people the understand, because once you fill in the context, you go, oh, of course, and then you can look and you see the rest of the world in a slightly different way, and that's scary for a lot of people. You get used to it after a certain amount of time, though. And with the Epstein case that we were talking about there, he what Edge is the training of all the technocratic leaders who are to come, who are in charge of the big, who are not just to come, who are in charge of the big technocratic companies at that time. Jeff Bezos, Salakamanga, Larry Page, Sergey Brin. These aren't little boys. Evan Williams, head of Twitter. Salakamanga was a deputy head of YouTube in 2008 when he's attending the one on manipulation on behavioral insights and nudge units run by Richard Thaler at Edge. That course is Salakamanga of YouTube, Evan Williams, who's the head of Twitter at that time, Elon Musk, who's obviously going to go on to be involved in masses of social media platforms, so they already knew that back then. Jeff Bezos, who also has a load of this is just like, there's only 10, 12 people in the room, and they are the biggest people, because that's what Epstein was doing. He was mentoring and training the technocratic elite leadership that are going to take over from the Clintons and the Liebermans and the Kerrys and the RFK Juniors and all the ones they funded, because we hate people. We hate these people. Eventually, but that politics has to fall apart anyway, because it's riddled purposely by the enemies of that whole system. The people who want to destroy the system are the ones who are in control of the system.
Controlling it. Well, they don't want to collapse. I don't think they want to collapse the system. I think what they're doing is, to put it in, my entire world is like dominated by the construction that's going on outside my window, because I was in that Altadena fire and everything's being rebuilt, including my own backyard. But like, I feel like they're building a scaffolding to keep the top in place while they reestablish the foundation underneath. And let
that top is a very small,
very small, which is why you see people like senators and stuff. they have actually, in a way, more power than I think, because I've been, when I used to be in banking, like a couple of times I've heard, well, a senator called whatever the COO of this huge bank and said blah blah blah, and that's what we're doing. And I'm thinking, wow, a senator gets to tell this guy what to do. That's amazing. But on the other hand, and they have a lot of power. Like they tell businesses what to do and stuff, I think. But I think on the other hand, I mean, they go down. They go down in planes. They get unelected. Like they do go down, and then
They go down on planes with, and then they get found with bits like square bits missing from their heads and stuff. And it's very sus.
But they, unless they're the ones who actually know where the bodies are buried. Like I think Biden was just such a big hitter, such a heavy hitter, very corrupt, really called shots.
Oh yeah, you can go back in time and see he's moving in those circles as well.
Yeah, so I think they told him to pretend to lose his mind so that he would be exonerated from this. He got everybody in his entire family pardons for stuff they weren't even yet accused of, which is unprecedented. Yeah. And the scandal was that he didn't know what he was doing and used an auto pen. The scandal was that he had no mens rea.
Amazing.
Like crazy. They're clever on the one hand, but obvious on the other.
It's how they go. Is how I mean, this is the trick. The trick is how can they commit this? This is what their game is. How can they commit these levels of behavior, negative behavior? How can they do all of that and make it to old age and die naturally? If they don't find a way to live forever, which they all party hard though, these guys. I'm seeing that. I'm seeing an example of that now because I'm reporting on something in the UK at the moment. My last article was about a guy called David Sullivan. David Sullivan is the owner of West Ham football club. If you don't know what that is, it's a Premier League football club. They're down London way, so one of the richer clubs. Not really the richest. There's probably about 8 or 9 that are richer than them in the Premier League, but still one of the richest clubs in the country. He also was a pawn king for years. He was he ran a load of movie companies. He then run something called the Daily Sport and the Sunday Sport, which was newspapers on Fleet Street. And he had a habit throughout his life of inviting girls, usually using names like Don Bell and stuff. He'd invite girls for interviews as PA, and when they got there, he'd be in his robe and he'd say, okay, well, you're going to have to sleep with me. That's it. And they'd be in a mansion and they'd be stuck in a situation. So they get coerced with lies, etc. That's not consent. So he's been doing that for over 35 years, that old chestnut. And he is approaching the BBC are in a high court battle with him at the moment. And no one knows about it. Well, I do. I'm letting it all go. I'm sorry to him, but you're playing a silly game because the BBC could just name him and they can afford to fight him in court and they can afford to win against him in court, but they're not doing it because they love to cover things up and hide things for as long as possible. So it's another one of those processes. I've had that with another case that I'm involved with, the Tim Westwood case, where I saw firsthand Tim Westwood and what he was like when I was younger and working in hotels. Later on, it's clear that he had basically, and people don't really understand what that case is because that's also selling girls into sex slavery to yardie Jamaican gangsters. That's wild, and there was lots of girls who ended up getting into that, going down that route because of Tim Westwood. And so that hasn't even been mentioned properly yet. The majority of Tim Westwood, the other guy I'm talking about, he's now been arrested for rape. I've been campaigning against it for a while, so he's actually now been arrested. He's going to end up having, there's going to be loads of people come out. But I think what people don't realize is that nearly every single one of his victims were from the black community in the UK, and the black community is relatively small, and none of the black community spoke up. I was going around 6, 7, 8 years ago, going around to different people in the black community, asking them to help me expose Tim Westwood to people within the black community who have been affected the most. every single one of them even one of them who worked for the BBC at one point tried to help cover up, and a lot of this happens. There's a lot of mixed corruption. This guy David Sullivan, who I've written the article on, who's in the High Court against the BBC at the moment. The BBC obviously want to release a documentary, a panorama probably, about his behaviour, and he's blocking them. Two of the accusers, at least two of the accusers, are 15 years old. So were 15 years old at the time. So I mean, it's clear that he had been doing this behaviour. He was boasting in the 80s in newspapers to bonking 20 girls a week. And you can imagine that most of that was probably through deception, if
they
not
need
through other ways.
someone really need in order to stop that behavior, which is not just if they're doing it and it's getting covered up, it's unlikely they're the only ones. And in order, so the Me Too thing, that there's a lot of fishy stuff on the Weinstein story. That's obviously a psyop. I have my theories.
Gloria Steinem behind a lot of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Old CIA Steinem.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, you had a reference to they were paid by the CIA, which was I never even heard of that. It was some like an old 60 Minutes thing or something that you had in one of your articles.
Oh yeah.
That where they had originally outed her. But but in reality, that kind of behavior is really awful, and it was a big deal. It was very common in law firms, and I worked at a law firm in one of my summers of graduate school, and it was very common. And what happened right around that time, there was a huge lawsuit that I think the secretary got something insane, like $1 billion award or $100 million, something crazy that really brought the law firm to their knees. And the behavior became really like they were now everybody has to go to this dumb HR stuff. But at the time, and in banking too, the partners would get together and say, "Hey, asshole, you're one of these guys." They maybe all were. We're not, this is our money. We are not doing that anymore. As soon as they nail a squirrel to the tree, as this says, like a warning to the other squirrels, it stops. I feel that even about running red lights. Like if you stop everybody who runs a red light, people stop running red lights. Like you can stop it. And if it's going on and on in multiple different sectors and being covered up, it's going to continue, and it's a terrible practice. It's not a good reflection on the society, and the fact that the government-run propaganda arm is complicit in covering it up. And I think sports has something to do. Like they somehow these sports leagues, they have such power somehow in.
Well, that's
media.
how that. I mean, Youngkerman. That's why she's so difficult. She came up through Infront Sports Media. She bought big sports companies. She had Shanghai deal with a big sport company that she sold for billions. I think it went for 7 billion in the end. That had got the rights to show all of the World Cups, the football World Cup coverage, in really like bargain basement deals, shady ones that the German judiciary decided weren't very legal. But they got such a large amount. I think it's access. People behind the scenes in sporting events, you get to dark rooms, you get to speak in the boxes.
It doesn't even have to be dark rooms. It's just it's very glamorous. That's one thing I notice also about these politicians, especially the European ones, but also the American ones. The American ones look like they have more fun. The European ones, though, when we see pictures of them having big meetings, they're at like Versailles and stuff. They're in places that are opulent and grand. They're eating caviar. Like, I think don't underestimate the power of luxury and celebrity and access. That I think that they get starstruck or jock sniffing or whatever, and they don't want it to go away.
I kind of think that's why I had I had a very early jolt that probably set me up for doing this work really well, which my first job was in a 5-star hotel just at a moment where Wembley Stadium had been closed down. Wembley Stadium was a national stadium for the England football team. It held loads of massive event concerts and stuff. And as it got shut down to be rebuilt, the Millennium Stadium in my home city, Cardiff, got created. It was a 70 to 80,000 seater stadium right in the center of the city. A glorious, wonderful, I mean, right in the center of the city. It is a beautiful stadium.
I'm glad it's
Cardiff,
beautiful because that could go horribly pear-shaped.
yeah. No, I'm Welsh. In Wales, like, sport is almost everything. It's all sport and culture. We're all just we are really fun, happy people. We you know, it's really nice to have such a big stadium. When that kicks out, the entirety of Cardiff is blanketed with people from shoulder to shoulder, because it's a really small, tight town. And it feels amazing to be part of as well. Everybody, you know, all of the shops make a load of money, all of the things. But when that Wembley Stadium got closed down, all of the big events got moved to the Millennium Stadium. And I was in a 5-star hotel that was about 500 meters away from the Millennium Stadium on the other side of Cardiff Castle. And it was my first job. And suddenly loads of big stars and influential people were staying in this 5-star hotel. And I was a night porter, so I would go round and I would hear all the conversations. I was trained on getting girls from the local brothels to guests and stuff. You know?
I know.
Naughty past,
valet.
naughty. Yeah, when you're a night porter in a 5-star hotel, and I came straight from college, and the first I've talked about this in a few interviews, but the first question I got asked in my first ever interview out of college, it's like, what would you do if a guest wanted a prostitute? And I was like, send them to a brothel or the red light district. And they said, no, you would phone the girl, you bring them, you meet the girl, make sure they're presentable, explain the rules, take them up, introduce them to the guests, say you're going to be back in an hour, make sure they exchange money. If they don't want to, actually, if you don't feel something wrong, you get them to give you the money, you go down, then you check on them in an hour, you knock on them. If they're done, they're done. If not, you take the girl back down, you call her a taxi, you sit down, give her a cup of coffee, have a little conversation with her, and then you put her into the taxi as though she's a normal everyday guest, and you go back about your work. So that was what my first ever question in any job interview was.
That's quite the process. What if they asked you?
Hey?
What if they asked you? What if it was a gal or a gay guy?
Right, no, that happened. That of course that happened on occasion. I got a couple of girls asking me, but I also got the pinch on the bum. But I went out with a girl who worked in housekeeping, so
you couldn't, like the old
I wasn't that naughty.
The 7-year-old lady who's like,
hey, I do remember before me and that girl got together, I did kiss a 50-year-old outside on the steps.
What were you, 18?
Those were good.
I
was like 18, 19. She was drunk and she just turned on me and just went down my throat, and I was like, well, it was funny anyway. But I mean, when I worked in that, I saw everything. And suddenly I was like, I mean, we got up to naughty stuff all the time. We saw naughty stuff. We were smoking drugs on the roof. We were all having fun, and we were paid to have fun. And in that environment, then the guests loosen up, and I met lots of rich people and got to see, again, like I say, I got to see behind the curtain, and I got to see events like with Tim Westwood and how they use girls, and and how they treat people, and I got to see other examples of these celebrities behind the scenes in places where they thought they couldn't be seen or no, but I'm noting. Yeah, so I got that experience, and it taught me very quickly that I took away all starstruck. And when I meet someone famous now, it's just a person who's famous. I mean, most people go home and they have a poo, and they and they wander around the house and they drink a bit of tea.
They put their pants on one leg at a time, like everybody else. And I never really understood that. And she's like, "Do you think his blood is actually blue?" No.
But you can see that they have lots of conversations. And if the public could see those conversations, they'd be shocked. Because to be honest, with all conversations, if you have a good conversation going on, or people have had a drink or whatever, people talk about stuff, and we're so offended all the time by things, and it's so easy to get offended anyway. And people hide a lot of what they talk about, and so they end up the ones they can talk about with. If influential people find other influential people, they end up talking about stuff, and then they end up doing stuff.
I
And some of it's
was
good, and some of it's bad.
I was at a basketball game right after Obama got elected for the first time, and I saw Spike Lee and John McCain just yucking it up, like in
Mhm.
some, and I was like, I mean, Spike Lee was obviously on Obama's side, and McCain and his bitter fight with Obama, and he's a racist asshole or whatever. I mean, within days it was, or weeks or whatever, and they were just yucking, like they knew each other. I
Yeah.
was like, okay. And if you ever saw like Trump at Snoop Dogg's roast or something like that, like these people act like there's this huge divide, but that's only for us.
It is only for us, and to be honest, we do it too. Because once you get into a situation with someone who you don't like, you find you have to try and find common ground and not end up shouting and
Yeah.
fighting
If your
with
brother-in-law
them.
is a cop and he shows up at Thanksgiving, what are you going to do? Actually,
Man,
the
there's
way,
some. I've
yeah,
been in some
that
situations where I'm
could get ugly, to be honest.
I could I have a hard time in front of some people. I remember going out with this one girl, and at the time, her brother-in-law, not anymore, but her brother-in-law was the head of Splash Damage Games. Like,
What
he
is
was
Splash Damage
Splash
Game?
Damage Game did all Batman Arkham Asylum and some
Oh,
big games.
nice.
Like, really, he was a really rich guy,
Yeah, that
and
sounds
we
star-striking.
used to go down. He took us out to Monaco one time for 3 days to look after their child for an hour. You know, that's the
Fancy.
type of person he was. Yeah, extremely super fancy. And he liked to impose that fanciness upon people. He loved it. He loved that. He loved to show how fancy he was. He loved to show it. And for someone like me, it doesn't work. When he took me out of Monte Carlo and he's going around going, "Oh, look at this car." Oh, it's just like goes in. It just doesn't stick with me. I'm like, it's all right. And our whole idea of how the world should work is so much different that when we sat around the table at Christmas, oh bloody hell, we were like butting heads all the time because people look for, when you go into those situations and you end up arguing with people, you end up not going over their house anymore. That's as simple as it is. You just don't go over their house because you butt heads all the time. But
Yeah.
the fact is that if you're a good person and you're a nice person, you'll probably get on with almost anybody. You can get on with almost anybody because as long as you're polite to them and they're polite to you, that's the basics
I
that you
agree.
start off with.
And part of that comes from good faith. So I get along with like good faith liberals and, totally fine. Anybody who really understands the true nature of the system, and like, okay, if you think that socialism can work for this, that, and, that you have faith that a government is going to, in good faith, work for the people, okay, you're wrong. But I understand that position. But the whole like Trump derangement syndrome, or the flip side of that, which is the MAGA syndrome, like it's hard for me to, get on reality. But I have to tell you, there is a reality, which is they're starting with a jackhammer and a circular saw 1 foot outside this room. And my
Wow.
listeners know what that's like. It is not cool. And then as soon as you see them, my insane dog loses his mind. So I want to
Wow.
make
I
sure
love
that
your
you.
insane dog. I
Oh my
love
gosh,
him.
he's insane. It wasn't supposed to be like that. We lived in a quiet neighborhood and now it's crazy. If you ever are in the States or in LA, I will give you some disaster tourism. It's
Yeah.
crazy up here. But I don't want to end without making sure that if you had anything on your, anything you wanted to make sure you shared about any of the topics we discussed, I don't want to cut you off.
So I
Wrap that.
Yeah, I'm working on a fair few things. I will say that with the recent articles, I wrote a recent article called Nuclear Apartheid, Schwab and Teal Nuclear Apartheid. That's a really important article. That is about
oh yes, I read that one. That one was
yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Peter Thiel's father, Klaus.
Yes,
Thiel,
the two Klauses.
The two Klauses going at the same time helping the South African apartheid regime not only get nuclear weapons technology, but to systematically genocide tens of thousands. It must be 100,000 black people must have died throughout that entire time by basically making them ingest uranium with
I
no
was looking at that. It
safety
was like
protocols.
open, pit mining of uranium. And the first thing I thought was, geez, can you just go mine uranium? What the hell? Like, I can't believe you can even live near uranium without getting
Yeah.
super sick. And
Well,
I'd never even heard of that before.
yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing article. It was very sad. It was hard. It was really, really
Yeah.
hard to write that one. That one was that one. I took about 2 days where I was devastated. I was depressed. I was just like, I had to just stop for a while because it doesn't happen very often to me now because I'm used to pretty shitty stuff. But that was
Yeah, the dark
horrible. That
stuff.
was really, really sad.
Being eaten
Um,
from the inside out.
yeah,
It was crazy.
the David Sullivan work that's going to continue. Let me tell you a quick story just before the jackhammering started.
You'll hear it.
You'll be the first to hear this. You'll be the first to hear this. So I come from South Wales. David Sullivan comes from South Wales. I know a lot. I know he's from an old Irish family, and I know loads of old Irish families. And the day after I started properly investigating it, I walked into a local bar and I saw a friend of mine who's used to run a pub round by me. A really wonderful guy, Dave. He's an Irishman. And I said to him, yeah, I get a feeling I should ask you this. Do you know anything about David Sullivan? And he said, oh, I'm a Sullivan. He said, actually, I'm from the Sullivans. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, his mum was a Sullivan. And it progressed really quickly. The conversation progressed to something else because I was looking for connections about Robert Maxwell and David Sullivan.
Yes, I was interested in this. Yeah.
Yeah, they worked in Fleet Street together, of course, because Robert Maxwell was at the Mirror. Now, also, I found that David Sullivan entered into talks with Robert Maxwell's people about buying Futura Publishing. And I heard rumors that Ghislaine Maxwell used to organize David Sullivan's sex parties back in the day before she had met Epstein, which would then make the Epstein sex parties and stuff make more sense as well, because Ghislaine just didn't start from nowhere. She had been progressing on throughout her career in doing something like that. Couldn't find anything for the time being on that. I'm sure, it's all just rumors, speculation. But then again, I was told something else, and basically, I was told how in very great detail, and an interview will be coming soon. In very great detail, how Robert Maxwell, the technique he used to spy on every member of Parliament in the UK during that period. It is a fascinating article that goes through multiple countries. It is amazing. He was feeding everything through multiple countries and back.
What was
into
the
Israel.
timing of that? Because I have done a fair amount of work on the Danny Casolaro murder. I should say I've read a lot of stuff.
Late
I
80s.
didn't do the work, but
so between 1987 and 1991, this is when this will all be set.
Because Maxwell was instrumental in the theft of the Promise software and then adapting it to allow Israel to have a backdoor into any of the countries that bought this, like surveillance. It was supposed to be police stuff, but do you think this could have had anything to do with that? It sounds like a
massively something to do with that. In actual fact, the coming interview is going to be with me, this guy, and Maxwell's main IT guy. So
wow.
I'm sure we'll find out a lot more. It's wild. Honestly, it's wild, but all verifiable. Is amazing. The friend of mine actually got arrested during this period after Maxwell came off the boat. And that led to the arrest of Robert Maxwell's sons afterwards, because the police were actually tracing how he was doing a lot of this. And I don't think most of that got said out loud. So it's going to be really interesting. That's what I'm working on now. And anybody who wants to grab my stuff can go across to newspaste.com. Substack is a great way to support me. Buy me a coffee. I mean, I really need all of the help I can.
You really need a new mic. So I want, can someone buy you a new mic? Can they go into like they buy me a coffee and give you $400? That's what you need. So that would be excellent. I really strongly, people know I've said this like 3 times about only 3 different people. Like when you've got a professional caliber researcher and journalist dedicating his life to this on our side, not owned by anyone, they need to buy food. They need
oh my God, you would not believe.
Yeah.
You would not believe. I some days and I really do. Some days I look and I'm like, all I need is a subscriber and I can actually afford to eat.
So yesterday was a good day. Hard. You got I did the annual thing, so you got probably
gave me a little tear in my eye and made me very thankful and I am and fueled me to go forward. That's
fantastic, babe. Wow, it's always so fascinating. I just man, you have all this stuff in your head at once and you can just tell it in narrative form. I'm always confident that whatever it is that you're going to bring to the show is going to be riveting and always a great conversation.
Oh, you're so lovely to me, and I thank everybody for actually taking. I still try not to look on my. I'm just going to the next thing, just trying to find the next thing, and just hoping, and the rest of it, like, because I do so much writing about these things, so much drafting, everything's in my head. So I do find it like it's wonderful to have an outlet, to have ability to speak and to be given platforms. And I said a lot in this platform that I know I can't say in a lot of other platforms. So I
you can say anything here.
I know. I love it.
I'm so shadow banned anyway. I figure probably nobody even hears it anymore. But you must come back after you go to the Vatican and whatever that leads. You might want to put your Find My Phone on Facebook or something so people can track your movements. Like, wait, his dot disappeared. Like, get him out of there. Airlift.
Well, so let's see what happens. I know.
Come back and give us a full report.
And I got to do it in the first place because I can't hide away from the world. I got to see what's behind that curtain.
Right on, brother. Thank you so much. It was so fun talking to you. See you again soon, Johnny. Everybody, it's newspaste.com or Johnny Vedmore at Substack, whatever.
Newspaste Substack as well.
Oh, it's Newspaste on Substack. Okay.
Yeah.
And how about X?
Johnny Vedmore. You can actually just put in Johnny Vedmore most places and find me.
Yeah, that's what I think. All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming. Later.